Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Taming, Tantrums, and More. My name is Diana Wirtz. I'm a liaison here at the Family Resource Center. We're so pleased today to have three presenters for our webinar, and I'll introduce them to you now. Wanda Taylor, Sue Ahn, and Ashley Latvabadi are behavior intervention teachers here at FCPS's Behavior Intervention Services. Behavior Intervention Services provides behavioral intervention and support for students receiving general education and/or special education in grades pre-K through 12. Behavior intervention teachers are assigned to each pyramid and work closely to collaborate with the administrators and staff to develop systematic plans for behavior. Welcome, Wanda, Sue, and Ashley, and I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Diana. We're happy to be here today. And we're going to ground ourselves in a little bit of true or false around tantrums. So our first one is tantrums are only a result of bad behavior. So is this true or false? Think in your head if you think that this is a true statement or a false statement. So I'm sure you assume this is false. Tantrums are often perceived as bad behavior or manipulation by our children. However, tantrums are usually a result of emotional overload or frustration rather than being deliberate defiance. So let's look at our next one. Tantrums only occur in toddlers. This one true or false? I have an 18-month-old I was sharing about previously that we're very much in the tantrum phase. I wish this one was true and that would be over soon, but unfortunately this is false. While tantrums are commonly associated with toddlers, they can occur in children of various ages, including preschoolers, school-age children, and even adolescents. Our next statement, tantrums are always a sign of poor parenting. This is another false one. Some people believe that tantrums are solely a result of poor parenting. However, tantrums can occur in well-adjusted children from loving and supporting families. Parenting strategies can influence the tantrum frequency and intensity, but tantrums still occur even with the best strategies in place. And finally, tantrums are always harmful. This one is also false. While tantrums can be challenging for sure, they are a total normal part of development and can provide opportunities for learning and growth. And when managed effectively, tantrums can help children develop those emotional regulation skills and improve their ability to cope with frustration and stress. So by dispelling these myths that we have around tantrums, you as caregivers can respond to these challenging behaviors with empathy and patience and effective strategies. Let's take a look kind of on our plan for today. We're going to kick off today by kind of reviewing the importance of routines and procedures in creating a stable environment for children. And following that, we'll delve into the understanding of the brain and uncovering the root causes of tantrums, shedding light on how some of that brain development can influence behavior. And then we'll transition into exploring effective ways to regulate emotions in both adults and in children. Excuse me. And we will then discuss power struggles and offer insights on how to navigate these situations effectively. And then finally, through some scenario-based discussion, we'll apply the strategies that we talked about and provide kind of practical examples that you may experience day to day. So in part one of this training series, we discussed the importance of routines, procedures, and expectations. With all those in place, it lessens the likelihood of tantrums. And if you were unable to attend, we encourage you to view the webinar on the Family Resource Center website. But routines, procedures, and expectations are foundational elements in creating a structured and supportive environment. Routines provide predictability and stability. And by establishing regular routines for activities such as meals, bedtime, and homework, caregivers can help children understand what to expect. And procedures outline the steps and rules for completing tasks or managing situations, providing children with clear guidance and expectations for behavior. So overall, routines, procedures, and expectations play an important role in promoting positive behavior, communication, and relationship within the family. But even with the best routines, procedures, and expectations you have in place, we know that tantrums and escalated behavior still occur.
So before we begin to dive deeper into tantrums, let's look at an easy way to understand how the brain works. You may even use this language with your child at home.
What people have told us is so revolutionary about a whole brain child approach is that actually you can teach your child about how the brain works. So you have diagrams available to you and even a hand model of the brain where you can show your child that there are lower parts of the brain, the downstairs brain, and there are higher parts of the brain, just behind your forehead, that allow them to think clearly. When kids actually can see the brain in their hand, they begin to learn what it feels like to use the upstairs brain when it's reasonable, when it's thinking, when it's being flexible, and when the other parts of the brain, the lower parts of the brain, are taking over. So when a child can see this, they can see when they're flipping their lid, and they could say, I need to take a time out because I'm about to flip my lid. And you can teach them how to bring their upstairs brain back in line, use it more, and actually connect with themselves and with others in a more rewarding kind of way.
So by having our own understanding of this model and teaching our children, we can help them understand why they might be feeling overwhelmed and how to regain control by calming down and accessing their rational thinking again. Encouraging deep breathing, taking breath, or using calming activities like drawing or listening to music can help children manage their emotions and prevent flipping their lid. So, what causes a child to flip their lid? There are many reasons why. It could be frustration. Children may become frustrated when they encounter obstacles or are unable to accomplish a task they want to complete. Being tired can lower a child's frustration tolerance and make them more prone to tantrums. Hunger can lead to irritability and difficulty regulating emotions, making tantrums more likely to occur. I know I'm quick to get frustrated when I'm hangry. Too much sensory input or being in an overwhelming environment can be stressful for children and may trigger tantrums. Children thrive on predictability, so disruptions in their usual schedule or routine can cause stress and lead to tantrums. Feelings of sadness or fear or anxiety can manifest itself as tantrums, especially if the child doesn't have the language skills to express their emotions verbally. Sometimes children use tantrums as a way to gain attention or exert control over a situation, especially if they feel powerless. Tantrums are common during certain developmental stages, such as those terrible twos that Ashley mentioned, or during periods of rapid cognitive or emotional growth. It's important for us as caregivers to recognize the underlying causes of tantrums and respond with empathy and patience, helping children learn to regulate their emotions and develop more effective coping strategies over time. Thinking about your child, what is something that increases the likelihood of them flipping their lid? By using proactive strategies. So how do we prepare? By using proactive strategies, we can effectively prevent tantrums and create a supportive atmosphere that encourages emotional regulation and positive behavior. Today, we're going to focus on 3 key proactive strategies: setting expectations, teaching regulation strategies, and manipulating the environment. Through these approaches, caregivers can empower children to understand and manage their emotions, establish clear boundaries and routines, and create a physical environment that promotes calmness and security. Setting expectations. Setting expectations with children is crucial for promoting positive behavior, fostering independence, and building strong relationships. For example, providing choice empowers children by allowing them to have a say in decision and ownership of their actions. For instance, when you get out of the car, you may ask your child, which grown-up's hand are you going to hold? Clear expectations outline what is expected of the children and reduces confusion. I might say, when we go to the restaurant, we are only ordering our meal and not ordering dessert. Positive reinforcement reinforces desired behaviors, encouraging children to repeat them in the future. Way to go making your bed before you went to school. Sharing any changes in plans or routines helps children feel informed and prepared, reducing anxiety and resistance to transitions. For instance, as soon as you pick up your child from school, you share that soccer practice was canceled due to rain, rather than sharing with them right before it's time to leave. Explain the purpose of an event or an activity helps children understand its importance and motivates their participation. We are going to the doctors to keep you healthy, and it's important that we check our bodies frequently. And you could ask as many questions as you have to your doctor about how your body works. Inviting your children in the planning process increases their engagement and investment in the activity, developing a sense of responsibility and cooperation. Can you help me make our grocery list before we go? Can you check and see if we need more eggs? Being reasonable in expectations sets children up for success. Be thoughtful about their age and cognitive level when setting these expectations. Overall, setting expectations with children using these strategies promote positive behavior and enhances communication. Regulating strategies. Teaching regulating strategies to children is essential for their emotional well-being. By teaching children emotional words, they can gain the vocabulary to express their feelings accurately, facilitating communication and understanding. In many elementary classrooms, students are taught to use zones to discuss their emotional state. If this is a language your child is familiar with, it may be something you can use at home as well. Find strategies that work for your child and encourage them to use them. Techniques like breathing exercises, yoga poses, or listening to calming music provide children with tools to manage stress and regulate their emotions. You might choose to include activities such as using fidgets, exercising, or spending time outdoors to promote relaxation. Finally, create a quiet, calm space where a child can go to when feeling overwhelmed. Teaching your child to use self-regulation strategies when they are stressed will help them navigate their emotions, build resilience, and thrive in various situations. These strategies may not come natural to children and need to be directly taught. As the caregiver, model these strategies, such as letting your child see you take a deep breath, counting to 10, or taking a break throughout the day to demonstrate how you manage your emotions in everyday situations. Engage in self-talk when practicing these strategies, verbalizing your own thought process and emotions to provide a model for your child to follow. For instance, you would say out loud, I am really frustrated. I miss that green light. I get worried when I'm running late. I know I can be flexible and count to 10 to calm myself down while I wait. Or you might consider role-playing scenarios. This allows your child to actively participate in identifying and applying regulating strategies in pretend situations, developing their understanding and confidence in using them. You might model and practice what it looks like when you say no to candy at the cashier line. Additionally, create opportunities for your children to practice these strategies in real-life settings. Before you go in, encourage them to apply what they learned in the setting. So before you go to the playground, you might remind your child that we are practicing deep breaths while we wait for a swing when they are all being used. Manipulating the environment. Manipulating the environment is a proactive strategy where us as caregivers set up the environment for success. We may do this through predictability. Predictability provides a sense of security and helps children know what to expect, reducing the anxiety and meltdowns. We can minimize overstimulation by controlling noise level, limiting clutter, and avoiding overwhelming sensory input, which can prevent children from feeling overwhelmed and dysregulated. So if you know that after school, your child has difficulty regulating their emotions, you might plan to have calm music and break time when they arrive home, rather than starting right away with the expectation of homework or chores. For instance, you might modify the physical environment by creating a place where the tablet or the video console is located so you can monitor and set limits on their screen time. Even with prior planning, lids still flip. Despite attempting these proactive strategies to support your child, it is important to acknowledge that tantrums or flipping their lid can still occur. While these strategies can reduce the likelihood of meltdowns, various factors such as your child's temperament, developmental stages, and external stressors can still trigger tantrums. Learning self-regulation takes time. So while you might be implementing these proactive strategies and teaching coping skills, it takes some time to see a change in your child's behavior. Sometimes there are things that happen that we didn't or couldn't plan for that still cause children to flip their lids. So let's talk about what to do in those moments. Regulate yourself. Children learn a lot from watching how adults manage their emotions. By choosing to respond and not react, adults can model healthy emotional regulation and demonstrate to children the importance of managing their emotions calmly and thoughtfully. You can model healthy coping strategies such as taking a deep breath, using positive self-talk, and a break when you feel overwhelmed. As the phrase goes, a dysregulated adult cannot regulate a child. When adults are overwhelmed or reactive themselves, they are unable to provide the supportive and empathetic response that children need during the moments of stress. Instead, by taking a moment to regulate your own emotions, you are better able to approach the situation with patience, empathy, and clarity. Co-regulating. Co-regulation is like teamwork between people, where they help each other stay calm, focus, and feel good. It's when one person helps another person to manage their emotions or behavior in a positive way. It's like being that supportive friend who helps you stay on track and feel better when things get tough. As parents, our role is to be that supportive person while your child is navigating these big feelings. Acknowledge and validate your child's feelings, even if you don't agree with their behavior. Let them know it's okay to feel angry, sad, or frustrated, and offer support in finding constructive ways to manage these feelings. They may need support in identifying these feelings, and it can take time to label how they are feeling. You are feeling mad right now because I told you it was time to get off that tablet. As you help them through these big feelings, stay calm and neutral and hold a space for them to go through their range of emotions. It is important when holding space for these feelings that as an adult, We are not ignoring and we are not ignoring and we are continuing to hold firm boundaries around safety. It's okay to feel mad. It is not okay to hit. If you feel mad, let's stomp our feet or try a different strategy. Co-regulation takes practice. And as much as we want to be successful every time, there will be times when we inadvertently get into power struggles.
So power struggles are absolutely normal and common. A power struggle is a situation in which two people compete for the control around an unsolved problem. So it is a situation that can cause both people to dysregulate and can continue until that cycle is broken. Power struggles are a common event in most households, and you can get into power struggles with anyone that you have a relationship with. So it's a natural response. But what we do when we find ourselves in the power struggle is where we can make or break our relationship with our child. So why do children engage in these power struggles, or why do we even? As children grow and develop, and they naturally desire independence and autonomy. So autonomy is the ability for the child to navigate their own self. Engaging in these power struggles can be a way for them to assert their growing sense of self and test these boundaries. Children are constantly testing boundaries as they navigate the world around them, and then also learning more about themselves, their needs, and their preferences. Power struggles may arise as they push back against rules and limits set by caregivers to see how firm they are or what they can get away with. Children may engage in these power struggles when they feel a lack of control over their lives or situations. So, by asserting themselves, they attempt to regain that sense of control over their environment or their actions. It can also mean a child to gain attention from caregivers or their peers. And they can also escalate a situation in order to receive more attention or to feel a more sense of importance. So, when a child feels frustrated or angry or misunderstood, they may resort to this power struggle as a way to express these emotions. It can be a way for them to vent their feelings or communicate their needs. And children may learn to engage in these power struggles and observing similar behaviors in their environment, such as adults, so between adults or among siblings or just others around them. And you may see them also mimic these behaviors as a way to assert themselves or to achieve their goals. So there are many reasons why power struggles occur. So let's talk a little bit about how we can manage our way through these struggles. First, that's really important is to just pick your battles. And it's a phrase that emphasizes the importance of choosing which conflicts or issues that are worth engaging in or addressing. So not all disagreement or misbehavior needs to be addressed immediately. Focusing on addressing behaviors that are significant, and these include things like safety concerns or respect for others or values that are very important to your family. And you just also want to determine the level of harm or disruption caused by the behavior in question. So some behaviors may be minor and can be overlooked or addressed later, while others may require that immediate attention to prevent harm to your child or to others around him or her. So just recognize that not all disagreements need to be resulting in power struggles. Just be flexible and be willing to negotiate with your child when appropriate, especially those minor issues that are not worth escalating into this larger conflict. Save your energy for issues that are truly important and worth your time and effort. And by being selective about which paddles to pick, you can conserve your energy and then also to maintain more positive relationship with your child. We always want to pick your battles before you get into battles, but that doesn't always happen. So my suggestion is, if you find yourself in that, what is it, power struggle, and you at that moment feel like it's not worth it, obviously, what I do sometimes is to say, okay, I give you permission to. And so it doesn't feel like you're getting to this power struggle and then they win. And so they are more willing to get back into that power struggle next time because they feel like that's a way they can get what they want. It's a strategy that to use also is just say, oh, I give you permission to wear blue instead of red today, or so forth, just to disengage. But disengaging is really important because we want to choose our responses. So our goal is to respond and not to react. So rather than taking our first response and then reacting without thinking, just take that beat. We want to pause and reflect. So calm any immediate emotional reactions before you respond to your child. Maintaining that calm, composed demeanor, and it's really important when addressing that power struggle. So by choosing your response thoughtfully and avoiding these impulsive reactions, you can effectively navigate a power struggle in a way that promotes understanding and cooperation. But sometimes it is really difficult to remain calm. And that's when you have to pause the conversation. So if you're having difficulty maintaining your calm, sometimes it is just as simple as walking away. Don't escalate with your child. You might need to think about how you're regulating. So think back to our previous slides about regulating. What are your coping strategies? What can you do? You may say, I hear you, but this is not a problem we need to solve today. Maybe we can talk about this tomorrow. Then when you approach that conversation again, it is when both of you are regulated and ready to come up with solutions that both sides are comfortable with. So when you take the emotion out of the situation, what is your child trying to communicate to you? So think back to the slide where we shared why children engage in power struggles in the first place. Are they expressing frustration? Are they trying to test the limits? Maybe they're trying to gain attention from you. If you can't figure out what your child needs, ask, but also be ready to hear the answer, even if you don't like it. So by approaching the situation with patience, empathy, and willingness to listen, you can foster a positive and trusting relationship with your child, even when faced with uncomfortable truths. So sometimes when you gain insight into their thinking, it may give you next steps on how to support them and resolve this struggle. So after you have regulated and reflected on the conversation, let's try and solve the issue that was a struggle in the first place. So first, you might consider offering choices. Whenever possible, providing your child with choices or alternatives to empower them and give them the sense of control. And this could really help diffuse power struggles by allowing them to feel more autonomy within limits. And offering choices allows them, sometimes when they're in that power struggle, they're dysregulated, they may not have the bandwidth or the cognitive ability to be able to figure out the choices for themselves. So offering that bounded choices can feel like they can gain control in a very chaotic emotional state that they're in. You can also look for those common grounds, which means you look for areas of agreement or compromise where both you and your child can meet halfway. So emphasize collaboration and working together to find a solution that satisfies both of you. And as Wanda mentioned before, use that positive reinforcement. Reinforce those positive behaviors by praising, acknowledging your child's efforts when they cooperate or make positive choices. Positive reinforcement can help motivate your child to continue behaving in a desirable manner. So it is okay not to have the last word. And whatever the solution is reasonable and something that you both can follow through on. Sometimes when it has to do with safety and when there is no choice, you have to hold firm to your boundary. So for instance, when you're on time deadline to get to the doctor's appointment, in these situations, you may have to hold firm. Your child may still be upset, and you can validate those feelings at the same time holding firm. Now, if possible, you want to make sure that in most situations, you're able to come up with a compromise or offer choices, but that's when you have to hold firm and your child may be more willing to comply. And then holding firm on those boundaries, make sure that you're creating the boundary that you can control and that is not solely dependent on that student's or your child's behavior. And so including the doctor's appointment, instead of saying, my boundary is you need to come to the car now, you can't change that behavior, but you may be able to say, I'm going to do this to help you come to the car. Just understanding that you are holding her firm to your boundary and the child's boundary. So we talked about giving choices and offering choices, and how you provide those choices to your child, say a little bit, and give that child a little bit of a say in how things will get done. And then you can also hold firm to your limits and expectations. So you might provide limited choices. And so you offer 2 or 3 options that are acceptable to you. For example, would you like to wear a blue shirt or a red shirt today? There is something called a time frame choice, and these allow your child to choose when they will complete a task or activity within a reasonable time frame. So, for instance, would you like to do your homework before or after dinner? Task choices let you choose which task they want to complete first. So, for example, would you like to clean up your toys first or set the table for dinner? Consequence choices present your child with choices between what will happen depending on their decision. So you might say, if you finish your homework now, you will have extra playtime before bed. If you choose not to, you'll have to do it after dinner. Preference choices allow your child to express their preferences in non-essential matters. For example, would you like peas or carrots with dinner? Routine choices give your child choices within their daily routines to promote independence. So that's something like, would you like to brush your teeth before or after putting on your pajamas? And finally, boundary choices. You can give your child choices within an established boundaries to reinforce rules while still giving them that some sense and some level of control. So for instance, you can say, you can play with your toys in the living room or your bedroom, but not in the kitchen. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, and I'm sure none of you have done this before, you may have made choices or said things that hurt feelings. So after things have calmed down, you may need to revisit some of that conversation, and then do some of that repair work, or apologize for things that were said in the heat of that moment. So by doing this, you're modeling to your child the trust that you have in them and the work to continue the trust that they have in you, and making sure that it builds a foundation for that positive relationship. Let's listen to Dr. Karen Purvis talk a little bit more about what to do when you have to still hold firm into your boundary.
Teaching our children to tell us their needs and to ask for their needs and to trust us to meet those needs is a huge marker of attachment. And matter of fact, it's one of the most empowering things that we can do to give our children voice, to ask, for example, for a compromise. Now, there's a vast difference between a child asking for a compromise and a parent considering that request, and a parent and a child getting into a wrestling match or a wrangling match. If a child asks, for example, may I stay up 15 minutes tonight and watch the rest of my show? Well, if you can say a joyful yes, that's a nice compromise to give that child. If you have to have the child go to bed, though, and they want to stay up longer than you can allow them tonight, and they ask you with respect for the compromise, and you have to say, we can't do that tonight, but ask me again another night. So we try to wrap it with hope for the future. When that child says, oh, I really please want to stay up tonight, or please, 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 and it gets into a wrangling match, we have to put our foot down and say, you need to go to bed tonight, but maybe we can do that compromise another night. So don't mistake a child learning to ask for needs appropriately with getting into a power struggle. Wrangling is about a power struggle. Compromise is about negotiating shared decisions. A child who will be competent with decision-making as a 16-year-old needs to be a 4-year-old who learns to share power appropriately in appropriate amounts. So compromises, when you can give your child voice, when you can say a joyful yes, is a gift that puts trust in the bank for the times you will ultimately have to say no. If you're saying your yes is well, then your child will learn to trust to take your no's. Maybe a challenge in the beginning, but they can accept your no, but ask me again another time, buddy, because I really would like to say yes when I can.
So by wrapping the no in hope and looking forward, the no doesn't feel as hard for the child to hear.
Teaching our children to tell us their needs and to
Right, that
ask for their
always ends up
needs and to
happening
trust
when I
us.
have a YouTube video in our slides. It always does it twice for some reason. But let's think about how we're going to put all these skills together. We're going to talk through some scenarios and think about what skills we talked about today and that can help solve these situations. So scenario one, and I know this is probably one we have all experienced. As a shopping trip at Walmart progressed, your child's energy waned and hunger crept in. Spotting a colorful candy display at the checkout, they pleaded with you for a treat. And when their request was denied, their frustration boiled over into a tantrum. They began to cry loudly and stomp their feet, drawing attention from nearby shoppers. So thinking about those strategies that Wanda shared with us, those setting expectations, those regulating strategies, and manipulating the environment, let's talk through how we can solve this scenario. So setting expectations. Before entering the store, you can have a conversation with your child about the expectations for behavior during the shopping trip. You can explain that treats are not always available or allowed, and that the tantrums will not change that decision. Setting clear boundaries and expectations beforehand can help the children understand what is expected of them and reduce the likelihood of a tantrum. Excuse me. And then our strategy. You can cue the child to use a coping strategy that you have been practicing to manage their emotions when you feel frustrated or disappointed. For example, you could teach your child to take deep breaths or encourage them to express their feelings through words instead of actions. And you may do this through modeling and coaching in this moment, keeping that co-regulation in mind. By giving the child tools to regulate their emotions, they can learn to handle the situations, like not getting a treat, more effectively. And then manipulating environment. To avoid the temptation of the candy display at the checkout, you can strategically choose a different lane or a different route through the store that doesn't pass by those displays. But you can also plan to have another item from home ready in your bag for the line, maybe a preferred small toy or a snack from home. And by manipulating the environment to reduce the triggers for your child's desire for treats, you then can minimize the likelihood of a tantrum occurring in the first place. Implementing a combination of these strategies can help address the child's behavior and make those shopping trips a little bit more manageable for both you and your child. Scenario number 2. Your child's frustration peaked while attempting to complete their homework assignment. Feeling overwhelmed by the math problems they don't solve, they slam their pencil down and storm from the table. And in their room, they begin to yell and throw their toys around, upset by their perceived failure. For setting expectations before starting homework, you might sit down to discuss what the expectations are for your child and of you during this time. Maybe set a timer for how long your child needs to work before getting a break, and where you will be and how they can ask for help if they get stuck. This may be a situation, if you know that this is a challenge frequently, you may need to be a little bit close by, not necessarily right on top and supporting completely, but maybe they're at the kitchen table while you're putting away the dishes, somewhere close by where they know that you're accessible. And remind them that homework can be challenging, but you are there for support. You may even remind them of a reinforcer that they can access once homework is complete. So thinking about our strategies, if you walk by and notice frustration, you may have to cue the strategy as your child is learning. Children are still learning to identify some of these emotions before it gets too big. So if you start noticing those things, those precursors, those beginning kind of itchy behaviors that you know are going to cause a bigger explosion later, you may tell them, hey, why don't you go take a stretching break? Or why don't we have a quick 1-song dance party? Or maybe give them a fidget that may help them calm frustration. And then manipulating our environment, making sure that during homework time, you've created a calm environment by minimizing distractions and setting up a comfortable workspace. Turn off any electronic devices not needed for homework, have a clutter-free desk and a calming area. And you may notice that the first location may become distracting. Somebody comes home from work or other siblings come in. So even just a simple change in environment, when you start seeing that beginning itchiness, maybe you send them to a cozy chair or a room with calm music, that may break that momentum of frustration and reduce stressors. Let's take a look at this scenario. So after being told it's time to stop playing video games and start homework, your child throws themselves at the floor, kicking and screaming. Their face red with anger as they insist they want to keep playing. They hurl toys across the room, expressing frustration at the unfairness of the situation, and tears stream down their cheeks as they feel overwhelmed by the sudden change in activity. Setting our expectations before the situation arises, establishing clear expectations regarding screen time and homework routines. Communicate these expectations calmly and consistently, ensuring that your child understands the boundaries. Using a strategy, cue those previously taught strategies. Coach your child to use the words or an I message to express their frustration. I feel frustrated when I'm in the middle of my game and I have to stop doing my homework. Praise and reinforce using words to communicate their needs and validate these feelings, because nobody wants to be told to turn off their game when they're really close to completing a tough level. And then thinking about manipulating our environment, create those visual schedules for the end of the day or a timer to help your child understand and anticipate transitions between activities. Allow the child to have ownership by letting them choose when to start homework within a specific time frame and empowering them to feel more in control of the situation. So this can be as vague as your homework needs to be done before dinner and the child can decide when they start it, or it might be more specific time frame, like between 4:30 and 5. So for instance, if your child is in the middle of the big boss fight of their video game and at 4:25 they know they have time to complete it, this builds time management skills, and some children may need to start more specific time frames like that 4:30 to 5 and then slowly fade to being them more vague to give them more control as they learn these skills. All right, let's look at our next scenario. As you pick out a different cereal than the one they wanted for breakfast, your child furiously slams their fists on their on your kitchen table, demanding their favorite brand. Their face contorts with frustration and they begin to cry. They refuse to eat the offered cereal, pushing the bowl away and causing it to spill on the floor. Tears stream down their cheeks. They stomp their feet and insist on having their preferred breakfast. So, setting expectations. Establish clear expectations regarding those mealtime behaviors and food choices. Communicate to the child beforehand that sometimes they won't get their preferred choice, but there are other options available. Thinking about that Dr. Purvis, right? That hopeful no. You know, today you're not getting the cereal, but maybe tomorrow. This sets the groundwork for managing expectations and reducing the likelihood of tantrums. And then strategies. You're always cueing and coaching and supporting them with using those strategies that you're working on. And manipulating the environment. You might implement a compromise strategy where the child can choose their preferred cereal on certain days of the week, while on other days they can try new options. And this empowers a child by giving them that control, by giving them that choice over their breakfast choices, while also giving them the opportunity to introduce some variety and flexibility. Scenario, this is our last scenario. During a family game night, your child becomes upset after losing a board game to their older sibling. Feeling defeated and unfairly treated, they flip the game board off the table. You're taken aback by the sudden outburst and try to calm them down, but they refuse to listen. They stomp their feet and accuse their sibling of cheating. And despite your attempts to reason with them, they storm off to the room, slamming the door behind them. Thinking about our strategies, we're going to set expectations before starting the game night. We're going to consider talking about sportsmanship and handling winning or losing gracefully and making sure that we're modeling those too, right? I don't really like to lose all the time either. Nobody likes that feeling, but how are we modeling how to accept that feeling and doing that frequently? You may even consider doing some of that role playing so that when we're practicing what that looks like before we're in the moment. Emphasize the importance of having fun and enjoying the time spent together as a family rather than solely focusing on that winning or that losing. And then cue that previously taught coping strategies such as taking a break, walking away, and listening to music by themselves until they are ready to rejoin the game. And I don't know if you noticed a trend in each of these scenarios. I keep saying previously taught strategy. These strategies are not something that in the moment you're just going to say, hey, go take a walk. And that's not something that you talked about at the kitchen table when they're at baseline and when they're not upset. These are the things that we want to make sure that that's when we're taking the time to teach these things and not just introducing them in the moment of the tantrum and in the moment of these heightened emotions. So we want to be, when they're available, talking through these, and then in the moment being able to be like, hey, you know how we talked about taking a walk? I can see in your body you're getting frustrated. A walk might help. And then manipulating the environment. Implement a rotation system for choosing games, ensuring that each family member gets a turn to select their favorite game. And this strategy promotes fairness and equal participation, reducing the likelihood of jealousy or resentment when one child consistently chooses the game. I'd also recommend that while you're going through, if this is a real concern and something that happens frequently, you might look at some of those more cooperative games where it's you as a team against the board game when we're in the moment of playing just for fun. And then you may take the time to practice and role play with the point of practicing winning or losing with some of those more competition games. But when it's just for fun, just giving them access to those cooperative games. So we've talked a lot about different strategies, and in summary, we've shared information to help you understand your child's brain and how they might flip their lid, introduce some proactive strategies, and how to create a positive climate in your home by using strategies such as how to diffuse power struggles. And as a caregiver, it's our role to nurture by being supportive, warm, and encouraging, to educate by modeling and coaching that regulated behavior, and validating by encouraging our child to develop their own opinions and beliefs as they grow. And by doing this and keeping our regulation together while we support this, those are really our keys to success. We appreciate you all. I know, Diana, I see there's already a few questions up.
Yes, thank you so much. That was wonderful. So we do have a few questions already in the Q&A. I encourage participants, please go ahead and type your questions into the Q&A and we will start going through. So the first question is, can you talk about de-escalating situations?
So I know this question came in pretty early, kind of before we got through the presentation. I'm curious, Amina, if you could write in the Q&A if you had any specific questions that maybe we didn't cover already, but I really feel like once we're in that moment, it's really being able to hold space while continuing to co-regulate and model that regulation. If you can give choices and strategies that allow them to start de-escalating. And Wanda or Sue, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think, yeah, just to piggyback on, also our first presentation, we did talk a lot about the before, during, and then the after as well. So once a child is escalated, if that child is in crisis, we can offer, like Ashley said, the choices or like previously discussed or coping strategies. But if they're in like a crisis, and sometimes tantrums are, the only thing that you really can do is just let them just de-escalate out, and intervening at that moment could escalate them even further.
Thank you. So another question we have here says, I use the strategies outlined for setting expectations, but it seems to invite argument about the plan of action we have. It has become an out-of-hand pattern in the family that the kids think they can argue about whatever thing we have decided. We try to explain why this is the plan. Maybe going to the playground isn't feasible today. It is exhausting and continuously discuss and argue with the kids about where we are going and what we're doing and how we are doing it. How do you handle this?
So I know one of the things, like having a calendar, a visual to support that expectation so that it's on the calendar, and allow space and talk to your child about changes may occur. But I think that having, depending on the age of your child, like having a visual or outline of what the week looks like so on Monday, we're going to the playground. This is our expectation on Monday and maybe on a Thursday. And we're going to stay for this time frame or whatever. But I think like for children, younger children, like having some type of visual to go along with it. So that way you could just say to your child, look at the calendar. This is what we're doing today, and then walk away from it. I don't know if you guys want to add to that.
I think this question came in right before the power struggles, and I was like, oh, great, this person's going to get so much from the power struggle section of the presentation. And I saw this and I thought, really wanting to kind of focus you in on the why is the power struggle happening. If you can think about what is your child trying to communicate, are they just trying to look for autonomy? What are those things that they're doing? That may help you figure out the why behind it, and it may help you figure out how to solve it a little bit better.
And I would say that this is absolutely exhausting because the little ones have more energy and stamina than we do, and they'll wear us down, and they know it. So I think the fact that you are setting these expectations before you go is great. One thing that I would suggest is they will argue because you engage. So if you have a phrase or words that you use, just say after, because once you explain it, they heard you. Usually you might have to explain it one more time, but you don't need to, it's not that they don't understand it, that you have to explain it over and over again, right? And so the fact that you're explaining over and over again is for them to be able to hook you into that power struggle, to wear you down, and then they'll win. So the only thing you really can do is, again, that offer that choice. When you give them the expectations, these are my expectations. And then just say, are we able to go? Are you able to, so just go back. These are my expectations, but these are my expectations. And just use the same phrase over and over again. And after a while, what they have learned previously is that them hooking you get their way. But if you stand firm and just say, these are my expectations, it may take a lot longer the first time because they have to learn that they can't penetrate the armor of this is my expectation. But the second, third, fourth time, they will understand much quickly, and they don't want to exhaust themselves when they know it won't get them anywhere. So it might be as simple as you stating the expectation once, maybe twice, and just say, we can, and just at the choice. These are my expectations. Can we go to the playground? Or maybe today is a home play. These are my expectations.
And I think Sue touched on something that I've been thinking about a lot as we go through this presentation, is that we're talking so much about you being able to regulate and you being able to remain calm, and that we have to teach our kids. And all of us are also on our own ability to regulate, and day to day, we may be able to regulate better than others. And so it's a lot about giving ourselves grace through all of this too. You know, I have a 5-year-old that I'm getting into power struggles too as I'm presenting this to you all today. And so I think as long as you know that to give yourself grace, and it is exhausting, but to be as intentional, to think about those strategies, and to be as ahead of the ball game as you can, and as proactive as possible, so that once we don't have to get to those de-escalation strategies, because like Sue said before, once we're there, it's much harder. But if you could be as intentional and thoughtful ahead of time, might be able to keep everybody more regulated.
And sometimes, for this question again, when we put ourselves, so if we kind of almost make it the rules are rules, I'm sorry, like these are the expectations. I really hope to go to the playground today. Can we meet it? Can we meet these expectations? No, then maybe we have to do something else, but these are the expectations. So you could also depersonalize it so that they're not trying to change you. They're trying to change the expectations, but the expectations are there. So gosh, I really wish they can go to the playground. These are the expectations. Do you think that we can? And that's all we can really do, is just kind of fall back on that and just hold firm. And again, once they know that they can't get their way, it's gonna, that strategy is going to be a lot less enticing the next time around.
And then just like kind of wrapping in that hope of no, that, from that video.
Thank you. So this family member has said, I've tried leaving the room in order to try to regulate my own emotions in order to respond to my child better, but my child will follow me all over the house. Should I just leave the house if able, or is there a way to get my space? Or do I just need to find another strategy to regulate?
This is a tough one. I think if that is how you regulate, I think that it may be important for you to explore other ways to regulate and continue to hold firm on needing space. It may be something where you have to set up a video or give them something to be doing. Hey, I need 10 minutes. Why don't you, use the tablet, use the TV, give them a snack in that moment so that you can then regulate yourself to then be able to respond. If it's about the snack, if it's about the tablet, maybe don't engage in that way, but do what you can to be able to give them something so you're able to get that space, if that's the best way to regulate yourself.
And also, if you know that this is your strategy and this works for you, where you have to kind of distance yourself or go to a different place, when both you and your child is at baseline, when you guys are not in this struggle or tantrum, establish a personal space in the house that you say that this is my personal space. And when I enter this space, you can ask permission, but you cannot enter on your own. So I think practicing that they don't necessarily have free reign around the house wherever they want, whenever they want, that you as an adult also have a personal space that they have to ask permission to enter, will also be helpful when these situations arise and you enter your personal space and also remind them, this is my personal space. Mom or dad needs 5 minutes, or put a timer, like Ashley said. You can calm down using this tablet. Here's 5 minutes, And then after that, mom may, I will come and check up on you or so forth. But I think establishing a certain, like even a physical boundary for yourself, when you know that this is the way you need to regulate for yourself on a regular basis, that you need to kind of leave that space. I think having a very formalized area where you say this is my personal space that you can only enter with a permission is absolutely fine.
Okay, the next question says, I've tried to identify my child's emotions and validate. For example, when my child is crying, I'll say, I'm sorry to see you so sad. And my child will come back and say, I'm not sad. And when I ask, what are you feeling? My child will say nothing. How do you handle this?
So I would maybe say, what makes me think that they're sad? I see the tears coming down your face. Identify what is giving you clues that they're sad, because they may not know that that means sad, or maybe you're getting it wrong and you're clarifying. But when you say, I see you sad, it kind of allows them to say, no, I'm not. You might say, I see tears coming down. Are you feeling sad? Or if they're getting angry, oh, I see you starting to clench your fists. That usually when people do that, when they're angry, are you feeling angry? It also starts giving them the cues on identifying what their body does if they haven't started to feel those naturally.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when a person is escalated, whether it's a child or adult, having someone in your space and telling you how you feel could be more escalating. So it could be a stimuli thing where I just need I need space to just process the information, and having someone enter that space is adding more stress and frustration when you're trying to process your overwhelming feelings. Sometimes it's just that, just taking a little step just to be with them, just it's hard. Just like not even yeah, go ahead, Mona.
No, I was gonna say, and then just going back to the part of the presentation where we talked about being proactive. So maybe kind of talking through the emotions and what they look like and identifying it when you guys are just like, having dinner or having some social time and talking about the range of emotions and what behaviors look like, people stomp their feet or they clench their fist or they tighten their jaw. That looks like, anger, like talking through it at a moment when the child is not escalated. So you can identify those things. So when they hear you say that, then they're like, oh yeah, well, that is how I'm feeling. So that's that teaching of what that emotion looks like.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the next question asks, what do you do when a child gets violent toward others or themselves when dysregulated?
So for me, that's a question of safety. So as much as possible to keep your child safe and the other child safe. I don't know what that could possibly look like, but thinking about safety, and then again, going back to when the child is not violent and talking about that situation or talking about what happened. So we're not going to kind of talk about it in the moment. We're going to wait till either, time has passed by to kind of figure out what does it look like for the next time, or what were your feelings when you were dysregulated. So that, okay, keeping safety in mind first, whatever is separating or, moving your child away from that situation, and then going back and talking to them about what happened when everybody is calm and it's not like, and before you know that your child, if your child showed that behavior pattern, then you're going to definitely want to talk about it before the next time your child is involved or interacting with others.
And rarely do a child escalate to a point of violence out of nowhere. There's going to be usually some signs of dysregulation beforehand, whether it's crying or pouting or yelling. And so looking at when, if any four of those presentation of those behaviors that you think will move towards violence, and that's when you have to make sure that, like Wanda said, whatever you can to keep himself or the child and the others safe. And that could be physically just kind of position yourself between you and others that could be harmed. It could be, you know, getting a child to a quieter, safe place where there isn't as much stimuli externally, so that they have more chance to be more regulated. It could be getting away from the other child, others that they could be violent towards. I think it's also recognizing those how they are triggered and the degree, and intervening before they get to that violent point.
It may be providing like a distraction, if you can't, like providing some type of distraction while it's happening, just a break, a complete break, or let's go do something that the child can already do. Let's go get some water, or let's go in the other room, or let's, provide them with some type of distraction.
And one
I
more
also
thing.
think, go
Sorry,
ahead, Sue.
Oh, no,
Um,
the question's really hard to answer, because depending on the context, situation, and what the violence looks like, it from the definition of violence and the age developmentally, that's a little harder question to answer. Sorry, Ashley.
I was gonna kind of say similar things too, as well as if this is a pattern that is lasting and you're putting in these strategies, or it's coming out of nowhere and you're just really overwhelmed, looking to see, you can connect with your school social worker or the school's counselor to see if you can get support, if they can give suggestions for any outside therapy to support you in your child. Sometimes these tantrums are more than just these strategies themselves, right? And we need more support. So I think if this is a real pattern of behavior and you put in some of these strategies and you're not seeing the success, it may be something where you want to look to get some more support from therapy.
So for the next question, you spoke a little bit about this, responding to the previous question, but the family is asking how to calm a child down when they're dysregulated, specifically if they are throwing a tantrum that includes throwing, slamming doors, hitting things, and this is a school-age child. How can you help them calm down safely?
I think one thing before even getting to the tantrum, because again, using the similar strategies that we talked about in the other question, disappointment is something that we all face. I think children obviously have a difficult time accepting disappointment or not getting what they want. I think it's also providing time and activities or incidences of them having a low risk, or situations where they can feel that disappointment. So when the bigger situations occur, they're able to handle that a little bit better. So something similar as two options that are similarly desirable to the child, but saying, oh, we can't do this today. So just practicing disappointment is also important. Sometimes we think of it as a very binary thing, like get what we want or don't. But I think having these incremental practices of like smaller, lower risk areas of failure or disappointment also sets them for success when the situation is a lot bigger. So I'm not sure that really answers it, but I do think that's also important, creating opportunities for a child to feel disappointment without a big consequence, low consequence is what I meant. And also providing opportunities for a child to feel failure with low consequence. Then they're able to practice how it feels to fail or be disappointed.
And practice those strategies, right? Those are really low risk places where they can practice their new coping strategies that you're working on. If your child's automatically going to that throwing and slamming doors and hitting things, that's what they're going to do when they're really at the peak, because that's what they're used to. That's what feels natural to them while they're learning these coping strategies. But like Sue said, if you're giving these, hey, something's going to happen today, we know that soccer practice is canceled and you really like soccer. That probably feels frustrating. What is a strategy that you can use? And start with those smaller things, start getting them success with those coping strategies that you're teaching. They may start realizing, oh, this really did calm me down. Oh, this did work. And then eventually they may generalize to when they're really heightened and really intensely feeling those big feelings.
So the next question is asking, is there a time frame for success? This parent has tried these strategies and scenarios with her two children, 3 and 8, but is exhausted with all the negotiating and wondering when can she start to see results.
Oh my gosh. 3 kids from 3 to 8 and all of it. I mean, it's exhausting. It is exhausting to be a parent, especially in, these ages. And I think that maybe taking a look, if you weren't able to attend or didn't see our first webinar on really making sure that those proactive strategies, those routines, procedures, and expectations are in place and they're solid and your children are invested in it and they're reinforced with it, those, by having that kind of overarching piece of your home, it may help to have less negotiating and less in the moment having to go tit for tat. So that might be something to consider to take a look at, but this is not easy. I'm asking you to regulate yourself all day for, like Sue said, these 3-year-olds who have all the energy in the world to continue to keep going. So it is exhausting. And eventually, as they learn, again, we talk about their developmental levels. This is also thinking long term of where are we seeing them to learn these skills so that when they're older, they really have the skills to be successful in regulating themselves. Wanda, I see you muted as well.
I was going to say, and then if remember, we talked about picking your battles and then celebrating those small successes. So this time it might be homework, or next time you might not pick all three, choosing your cereal, the games, and the homework. You might just want to pick one and celebrate when your child is able to regulate or follow the expectation. So you constantly want to acknowledge when your child is following the expectation, even if it's a small part of the expectation. So they may not eat their cereal, but they came to the kitchen to sit down and eat, or, you want to acknowledge those small successes so that they can see that positive instead of, reacting to the situation. We always want to try to be as proactive as possible.
And celebrating the successes with the children, but also celebrating the successes with you. Like, that's a big success that you were able to negotiate down and to kind of calm that power struggle. If you think about how many points of the day you are negotiating with your child, maybe 15% of the time you still have that tantrum, because out of the 150 times we had to negotiate, 10 times I did it unsuccessfully. You still had so many other parts of the day that you did kind of waver through all of these and manage through all of these things successfully.
And one more thing too, I think it's, if you're having battles with everything, for each of your child, prioritize that one battle that you want, that you feel like it's constant and more prioritized that you need to address, and then work on that specifically. And maybe you have to have a more intentional plan for just that, and just focus on that at the moment. And then when you find yourself negotiating, because again, that negotiation is just going to be unending. They're always going to find something to pull until they get what they want 100%. That's where you have to bind those choices and just give them this or that. And then they try to negotiate something. Option C, nope, this or that, right? You can have this cereal and eat. I'm so sorry, that's all I have. Or you can go ahead and clean up and choose something else. You may have to not get yourself into that negotiation, but give them 2 reasonable options that they have to choose from. And that way you don't have to entertain a million different options for a million different situations that can arrive for your 3 children.
Okay, we have one more question that's come in. It's asking, how do you get a child with ADHD to practice and use self-regulation strategies?
Oh, this is a tough question. Because obviously that child has a lot going against him or her. And also it's a huge question because there are just so many different components to it, and each child with ADHD is just so different in their needs. Obviously we're talking about more like executive functioning strategies where they have a hard time. children with ADHD don't understand or feel time as much, right? As well as that impulsivity, as well as inputting so much information all at once that those information cannot be prioritized of what information I need to be thinking about. So in terms of using self-regulated strategies, it really depends on the age of the child, what strategy you're thinking about, and also you have to be the brain for the child. So you have to, whatever you want the child to do to use self-regulation, you have to externally provide that for them, and then slowly be able to have them be able to internalize, have them practice use that, and then generalize it in there independently. That was a really general answer, but there is just so many components to this question. It's really hard to kind of pin down exactly what that looks like.
And it may be worth having a conversation with your child about their ADHD. I know a lot of times, and especially in this age range, as parents, we have trouble sharing, how much are we sharing with our child about if they're on an IEP or what their supports are or their disability areas. But this may be something where you say like, hey, you have ADHD, this is what it is, this is what it looks like, these are the things you might struggle with, and this is what we're doing to support it. And having that open conversation may help them really understand why those executive function strategies are really going to be helpful. And again, thinking about their cognitive level, their age level, and when it's time to start having some of those conversations.
And if a child has IEP, talk to the special ed teacher or the general education teacher. Ask them if they've seen strategies that work in the classroom that you could also use at home.
So the next question is asking, my child is 6 and most of his behavior is happening at school. How can I help him if I'm not there?
That's a great question. Well, I think first is if it's not happening at home, what are some of the things that you're doing at home that's helping your child to not engage in those behaviors? So whatever strategies that you're using that is working at home, sharing with the school team, and hopefully that will translate. The demands at school are very different than demands at home, and not only are they different, but sustaining it over a whole like 8 hours is a lot for school age child. So understanding that it's very environmental because the demands are different, and the stamina through it. I think it's really about working with a school team. And it's really hard to give you a very specific answer because of the characteristics of the school, how old he is, but also I think working collaboratively with the team is the most helpful because they also have knowledge on what the triggers are at school that's making him or her behave in a certain way.
Thank you. So we have another question that's come in, and it's asking, can you speak to strategies to let the intense emotions come out in safe ways instead of using distraction or calming? There are times that they're unable to just regulate even with help. The children need to learn that anger and sadness have a place and have a way to be expressed in a safe way. Can you speak to that, please?
I think it's going to really depend on your child and how they're displaying those emotions. I'm very much at the beginning age in my personal life with an 18-month and a 5-year-old, and I've already noticed that the way that they display their emotions of anger and sadness and frustration and what they need when I'm holding space for those big feelings are different. My daughter immediately comes to me and needs me to co-regulate, where when I now come to my son ready to co-regulate with him, he's like, get out of here, I need my space. So I think that it can be really specific to the student or to the child and what they need. And you're right, I think holding space for those larger emotions is important because you do want them to feel them, but also know that there are ways to display anger in an appropriate way. It's okay to stomp your feet, right? It's okay to do those things. And I think really a really great way is to model that. I tend to not show my anger very often in front of my children, but then they think, oh, people don't get angry, right? And so thinking about that modeling that self-talk through the days, I've made it a real point to self-talk. That example about the traffic light, I try to do that as much as possible. Like, oh, I didn't get that traffic light. Oh, that's so frustrating. Modeling as much as you can, how you have your anger and how you process it can also give them ways to do that in a way that's not just distracting.
And think of the way that your child is expressing those intense emotions. So if a child expresses it by throwing things, right, or breaking things, give them something soft to throw. Like I had a student in school who when he got angry, he would throw things. That's fine, come. And I gave him a really soft ball in a small room that and I was with him and he would just throw against the wall or throw against a chair, and that was absolutely fine. Or if your child expresses it by screaming, okay, let's find a way for you to scream, but it's not harmful to others around you. Let's find that way. If it's a way to break something, maybe you can give him or her paper to rip, and so however that they're expressing their anger, instead of trying to polish it, like you were saying, absolutely, but giving them the alternative to be able to use to let them physically let out that anger is okay. And then after they de-escalate, after they're kind of come back, then you can say, oh, those were a lot of sadness that you felt or anger that you felt. Okay. And then hopefully with their developmentally, as they get older, being able to express it where they don't have to use that more physical way, is what we obviously prefer. But for now, yeah, just see whatever the way they're in these intense emotions, think about the alternate way, whether it's breaking, yelling, screaming, throwing things, a safe way to do that.
Okay, another question we have is asking, how do you model good behavior at the end of the day when everyone is toast? And I think by toast, they mean exhausted.
I think it's a good thing to acknowledge that you're tired, and a good thing to acknowledge to your children, your family members that, I'm really exhausted right now, and acknowledge how you're feeling and what you can hold space for.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I am toasted many times of the day too, and so are my children. And I, like Wanda said, sometimes I'm like, you know what, I am feeling really frustrated right now because I'm just so exhausted. And again, that self-talk, that modeling, that sharing what's going on in your brain. We work so hard to be kind of the support right there, but as long for your child and not kind of get our emotions involved. But when you can start sharing why you might be shorter with your child or quicker with your child at the end of the day, it's because, oh man, I'm just feeling really tired. They, one, hear that, and two, also then start modeling or start doing those phrases and ability to start using them themselves.
And when you're toast is not a good time for you to model good behavior. So when you're tired is a time for you to find a way to rest. And obviously as parents, you can't just, but again, finding that space where you say, I just need 10 minutes. And then either timer, and during that 10 minutes, whatever the really preferred activity for your child is, that you hold only on those really important moments. So because if they have unleashed unreined time on iPad, it's not going to be that helpful in those times. But think about those really highly motivating that you kind of save until those times you really, really need it. Just say 10 minutes, you can use it, put a timer on. I just need time to just rest. So go into a room and take a break from life. That could be just music and closing your eyes. But when your toast is not a time for you to try all these things, it's not going to come out correctly. It's going to exhaust you. It's not going to motivate you, and it's not going to really yield in what we want.
Yeah, sometimes it's okay to have ice cream for dinner and a movie if that's all we're able to give at the end of the day. And we try again tomorrow, just like we said with our kids, or when, tonight, this is not the time, we'll try again tomorrow.
Well, this concludes our webinar. Thank you so much, Ashley, Wanda, and Sue. It was great information, and we hope everyone can join us again on a future webinar. Have a wonderful Friday.
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.